the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, how are banks and credit card companies going to be handling what might be the next charge-off crisis? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, debt could be the next great crisis. How do consumers handle debt that goes bad? Well, today, credit and debt expert Wayne Sanford is here to weigh in. Wayne, good to have you on the program today.
Thanks for bringing me back.
You know, let's start with a kind of a comparison between what happened in 2008 and today regarding consumer debt. Which do you think, assuming that we do have a crisis that's starting to kind of come to the surface, which do you think could end up being the bigger one?
Well, the 2008 mortgage meltdown, as they call it, was literally by far the largest. There has been a lot of reports that are coming out that card delinquencies are hitting 60-day lates, and these are on people that have consumer scores of 600 plus. That's happening with mortgages, but so they're starting to increase, but they're nowhere near the numbers are from 2008. Doesn't mean it can't happen, though.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what happens when a debt goes bad. I think this is a great opportunity to educate people. You know, what laws apply to third-party debt collectors that don't apply in-house debt collectors. So, a debt has gone bad, and the consumer owns it. Who's he? I guess he's dealing with the house debt collectors first.
Well, there's a couple of different options. When an account gets charged off, and credit cards, which are what's called revolving accounts, their charge-off date by federal and state law is 180 days. When you have an installment loan, which is like a car loan, that charge-off date is 120 days. So once that account is charged off, that's the 7-year clock where it can stay on your credit that you always hear people talking about. What people don't talk about, especially credit repair, credit management companies, whatever terminology you want to use, is once the account's charged off, that lender can, number one, just keep it on their books to offset profit. They can, like you just mentioned, have one of their in-house collection companies just start collecting on it. They can outsource it to a collection company, or they could actually just sell the debt to a debt buyer, wash their hands of it, and then now the debt buyer is the new owner of the account, and they can or they could sue. That's seemingly becoming an unfortunate popular choice these days.
What, according to the law, what can debt collectors do and what can they not do? I mean, the list is long what they cannot do, for sure.
The list is definitely long, and if anyone's not writing anything down, they can always Google, hey, what can debt collectors do or not do legally? But some of the main things is they can't call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They can't threaten. And they can't, when you have somebody calling and they're trying to collect on a debt and they're telling you that they're going to sue, just understand that they have zero power. Their job is to collect. They're, in essence, really a salesperson for the collection department. So people obviously get emotional and they get scared, but they can't threaten a lawsuit. They could still technically sue. They're just not at the level. That's like the janitor at Walmart saying that he's going to make a new pay plan. So you can say it, but that doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. But the main thing is verbally abusing you, threatening, lying, and calling after hours. Those are really the main things. But they do have the ability to call 7 days a week.
So tell me this, what kind of recourse does the consumer have if they have been a victim of harassment?
Well, one of the best things they can do is send what's called the cease and desist letter. And you telling them on the phone, do not call me. You have some good collection companies that will comply. Legally, however, they have to have written documentation. And these days you could send an email, but you have to confirm that the email was actually delivered, which it's obviously very hard to do, but a standard certified letter gives you that proof. Now, if it's within that 4-year time frame, then they're allowed to respond to your letter once saying, okay, we received your cease and desist, we will stop contacting you. That doesn't mean they can't turn around and file a lawsuit if they choose to, but that will stop the harassment, of course, and if they don't, you can start documenting everything because they'll probably call or send letters after that one initial one, and you could honestly sue them in small claims court for $200 per violation. Really simple. It's like a Judge Judy kind of court.
Yeah, I was going to point that out, that a lot of people don't understand that they do have legal recourse in the event that harassment does happen. And I would say, you probably agree with me, 70 to 80% of the time there is harassment, probably.
Yeah, there's definitely violations, and again, but just like with everything in life, you have to be able to document it. If you can document, you've sent the cease and desist, and they've still called you a couple of times, you have those phone calls, you can track it, you could literally go to court, and again, like we jokingly said, like Judge Judy, it's, here's the proof. I sent them this letter, it said to cease, they contacted me one more time, but after that, I've gotten 3 harassing phone calls. You will win that.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Talking to Wayne Sanford, is a credit and debt expert. If you want more information about Wayne, go to WayneTheCreditGuy.com. I did get that right, didn't I?
You did. Like I jokingly say, it's cheesy, but it's very easy to remember.
You said it, not me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Let's take a step back. Talk a little bit about you that you do get a lawsuit filed against you. You're a consumer with debt. It's gone bad. You've kind of been through the process. Now they decide to sue you. What steps do you take?
Sure. So the first thing, you'll get something in the mail that'll say you've been sued, or they might have actually paid the couple of extra dollars to have somebody, a process server, come to you. Obviously, if you've never dealt with this, it scares the bejesus out of you. I just tell everyone, deep breath, there's no debtor's prison, you're not going to jail. They still want to settle, but filing a lawsuit is the last-ditch effort that they have to leverage their money. Now, the worst, of course, is when you have a debt buyer who is suing you because on a $5,000 loan, they probably paid $150 for it. But unfortunately, legally, they're entitled to the entire amount because they're the new owners. You have to file a response, and it is as simple as putting the date, writing to so-and-so court from John Smith regarding so-and-so versus Discover Bank as an example, or ABC Collections, and you respond with, I have received the suit, and I'm responding as the court requested. You just go to the county clerk, they will stamp it. It's now been acknowledged, because if you do not do that, what'll happen is 95, maybe more percent, people don't even bother responding. Now, if it's the original creditor, I tell everyone, they got you dead to rights. They Discover Bank as an example, or Capital One has all the documentation. If it's a collection company, that maybe it's the first collection company or even the second collection company or debt buyer, they may not have all the proper documentation. If it's the first one, it really depends. But ultimately what they want to do is they're using the filing of the lawsuit as leverage to get you to do a settlement with them. They want to start collecting monthly revenue from people.
So they don't give that opportunity though up front, do they?
Some will, some won't. And I've had companies that actually, and hell, we'll call it out, because if they do it, they do it. It's no big deal. Midland Funding. They will send you a letter that says, hey, this account has now been transferred to our internal legal department. That usually means they're preparing to file a suit, but they're also letting you know that, so you can call them and then you can come to an agreed settlement between the two, so they don't have to go to court. But typically when it goes to them, there's a clock that starts ticking.
So in a situation, let me kind of go through three different scenarios and get your opinion on it. The first one is, I read this statistic somewhere years ago that if most consumers are not going to they're probably going to blow it off in some way or another, and they're not going to get an attorney, versus the 5 to 10% of consumers who do get an attorney. I mean, if I'm in that situation, I'm a debt collector, and I've got all these different people I could sue or am currently suing. I'm probably not going to put as much effort into the situation that the consumer who has the attorney versus the consumer who doesn't. Is that a fair assumption?
Well, what's funny is the moment a lawsuit is filed, even if you don't get served because they may not have your updated address, you're going to know, because you are all of a sudden going to get bombarded with solicitations from debt settlement attorneys saying, hey, we just noticed that you have a lawsuit that was filed against you. We can help represent you, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, all they're doing, and sorry to be stepping on their toes, is if it's the original creditor, they're just going to say, hey, it's probably best that we settle. Well, you could have did that yourself. You didn't have to hire an attorney for that, or you consult with somebody, like me, and I would say, here's what you can do. Here's your 2 or 3 options. Here's what's best for you. Here's what's the cheapest. Here's what may bite you in the butt. Just lay out all 3. I don't care what you do. You can pick all 3. The attorney, obviously, they want to get paid. And you're paying them to settle a debt that technically you could settle yourself. But just like with me, we kind of know what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, and all those different internal things if you've been doing it for a while.
Well, the second assumption would be, or second scenario, is it fair to say that if your loan is not a certain size, they're probably not going to file a lawsuit on you?
It's a yes and a no. So what happens is they don't pick individual accounts. Now, for obvious reasons, if they see a bunch of $1,000 accounts and there's a 10, 20, and 30,000, those are going to get special attention, because they'll typically pick a portfolio to sue, but like you said too, they're not going to most likely, and again, doesn't mean they can't, but the odds of them filing a lawsuit on a $500 debt when filing the suit may cost $300, probably not going to happen. But if they get the summary judgments or the no-show or you don't respond, that just gets added to the bill. And then you have a 5% interest rate per year on the dollar amount that keeps slowly start adding up. Now, what people don't realize, when you get sued, whether you show up or you fight and they still said, yes, you're guilty, you can still get a credit card. You can still buy a car. It just attaches to your name, so you cannot buy real property, meaning a house, or you cannot refinance your house until this is settled.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudence Money Radio Show. If you want more information on Wayne, go to WayneTheCreditGuy.com for more information. Let me give you one more scenario. Let's say that your debt keeps getting sold from one debt collector to the next. Is it probably a fair assumption that debt's not really worth trying to collect legally?
You do have some of these, what I call them, bottom feeders, debt collectors, and that try filing lawsuits. But if the original debt is sold to a debt buyer, and then they maybe resell it once or even twice, the odds of them having all the documentation that is required for the chain of command, so to speak, of where the paper went, because remember, this is selling paper. Well, paper to paper to paper, you're probably not going to get everything. And if you challenge it and then ask them to prove that this is the proper channel, how do you know that they're actually the real legal owners? A lot of times those suits are getting tossed out, but doesn't mean these companies bank on you knowing that you owe the debt, so you're not going to show up and they automatically win.
So important to get help in these situations, because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things you're probably not going to know. And it's a delicate balance of whether you come out on top or not.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. Just like they say, if you don't know your options, you have no options.
Yeah, very true. So let's talk a little bit about the statute of limitations, because this is probably the most important thing people need to know. When a consumer ends up charging off a debt, gets into a situation like that, what percentage do you think actually get through to the other side of the statute of limitations period, and actually get past that danger of getting the debt collector taking the legal means to collect that debt?
Well, I've seen some debt buyers that have sued, I kid you not, 1 month before the expiration of the statute of limitations.
Oh, man.
Whether they just noticed it. It's the absolute worst. You talk about, hey, here's the charge-off date. Hey, 1 more month, and they can't do anything except keep it on your credit. They can't file a lawsuit. Next thing you know, you're like, Wayne, I just got served papers. And it's like, and there's nothing you can do, but now we got to fight it.
Well,
it's rough. It's definitely popping your bubble.
Yeah. No. Tell us a little bit about. I meant to get to this before I jumped into a scenario. Tell the listening audience what the statute of limitations actually is.
Okay. So when the account's charged off, as we mentioned earlier, it can only stay on your credit for 7 years from that charge. The additional statute of limitations that most people don't discuss, which I think is a little bit more scarier, is they've got 4 years that original creditor or the new owner of the account, ergo a debt buyer, has to file a lawsuit in order to recover, quote unquote, their damages, which don't get me started on that phrase that they use. But if the account was charged off December 31st, 2020, then they've got till December 31st, 2024 to file a lawsuit. If they don't, and somebody didn't fill out the paperwork, and January 2nd of 25 comes, it doesn't matter if it's $500 or $50,000, they cannot file a lawsuit against you. And there are some of those more slimier debt collectors that will file suit on something that's over 5 years old. Because if the judge doesn't know it's 5 years old, sure, and you're not there because you didn't respond, boom, automatic. Yep.
Well, the one thing that I definitely want to talk and ask you about, because I know people probably wonder this, is these, I call them these debt management companies. You mentioned them a while ago, who they come on with the commercials. They're going to cut your debt in half. They're going to make it all go away. All the problems that you've got, and you're sitting there thinking about them because you got all this debt and you get some of it in collections. All I have to do is call 1-800 get out of debt, and everything's going to be okay. What exactly goes on the minute that you decide to get into that process?
Well, I will tell you, if you go to my website and click on blogs, you'll notice I am not a fan of their companies whatsoever. Because if there was a bigger soapbox I could jump on top of, I will definitely do that. So now, they're legitimate companies, and I always have people say, are they legitimate? Well, they're an LLC or an S corporation, so they are doing business legally. Morally, completely different story. My personal opinion is they feed on people's emotions, because if you're spending $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, and you're paying the minimum payment, and you just can't keep this up. And then all of a sudden you hear them saying, I can't do $3,000, but they could cut it to $1,500. I could do that. Well, for the people that are just playing, they're current on everything and they're just cutting it close every single time, understand that nobody is going to give you a discount or lower the amount if you're paying on time. You are going to have to be at least 90 to 120 days late before you could really have a company or yourself try to get a discount, because that's when they start getting worried that, hey, I don't think we're going to get paid at all. So you have to actually destroy your credit in order to save money. Now, I had somebody that wanted to file bankruptcy for $16,000, and I was like, stop, no. But if you have somebody that's $50,000 or $70,000 and it's just too much, they can't do it, well, here's the reality of the situation. And I tell everyone, your credit report's like a thumbprint. Every thumbprint is different. We have to take this specifically with your situation. What are your future plans? What are your future goals? Is this going to cause a problem for your job? There's so many different components that you have to sit down and ask. And they don't do any of that. They just say, oh, yeah, we can drop this down. They send a power of an attorney over. You make a monthly payment to them, and they start paying these bills. The problem is if it goes past the charge-off date, they might decide to sue, and they'll be happy to help you for an additional fee, but they don't care about that. It's just they plug you into the system, and you'll probably never get the same person, and it's just your number.
You know, probably one of the worst stories that I've heard is a person who's got they've got too much debt, but it's a reasonable amount that if they made a couple of lifestyle changes, they could get it paid off. They go to a debt management company, and the debt management company convinces them to stop paying on those debts. I mean, one of the worst pieces of advice that could be possibly given, and I guess you see that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that was our exact situation. I just had a lady that she was going to sell her house. She was literally just struggling to pay all the monthly minimum payments. Her sister told her about this debt settlement and how it helped somebody else. Well, she had a perfect payment history. Everything was perfect. If she just sold her house a little bit earlier or just held on, and when her and I had that conversation, I was like, did you lose your job? She was like, no. And I go, why did you do this? And she goes, my sister, and she knew at her core that something was wrong, but she just didn't listen to herself and paid the price. And it sucks to hear. I'm sorry to use that language, but if she would have had these credit cards paid off, she was probably close to a 780. And I struggled to get her to a 620 so she can buy her new house. You know, it's just rough, but you have to come to that conclusion. You have to realize, okay, if I need to save money, because a lot of people, you're just in that pickle. You can't get out. Credit cards are daily accrued interest. If you're paying $300 a month, probably 160 of that, 55%, is going to be interest. Multiply that times 1 year with that one card, and you look on the credit card statement, it'll actually tell you, which people don't want to look, hey, if you make the minimum payment even a little bit more, you're going to have this credit card paid off in the next 15 to 27 years. You know, so you have to make that decision.
These are clearly things that it would seem to me that the politicians should clean up. I mean, some regulations, especially when you're looking at the way they have let the interest rates go up on consumer debt. Is just unbelievable. But yet they do nothing about it. They took that anemic shot at doing the CARD Act back when President Obama became in his first
10%
year. That was just such a joke. Why aren't you seeing politicians step up? Is it just because of who's paying who to get reelected? I mean, what do you think?
Straight up lobbying. When they first started coming up with the bankruptcy rules, credit card companies lobbied heavily to not be included, which of course is a joke and a half because they're the main reason why people are filing bankruptcy.
Right, sure.
So they actually lobbied really hard to not be included in that situation. They clearly lost. Again, you can only throw so much money to the point where it's like, no, this is literally the reason why they're filing. And I remember seeing, this was right around a year before the mortgage meltdown. I had a young gentleman that came to me, referred to somebody. We met at a restaurant. Everyone wanted to sit down and eat. He had $500,000 worth of credit card debt. Bank of America just, hey, you know what? You're new with us. You're living and breathing. Here's a $50,000 line of credit. They were giving it like they were breathing. And then obviously leading up to the mortgage meltdown, they were greedy. They were getting those big interest rate fees, all the fees. They were making tons of money. The more meltdown happens, they cut literally, I think, $3 trillion worth of available credit down to like 1.75. So now they critiqued everything, and then of course what happens is the belt slowly starts opening up again, and now we're slowly moving back to, it's like we don't learn.
Yeah, tough situation. Well, Wayne, I appreciate you coming on the program. I think this is good information that, especially if anybody's dealing with it, needs to hear. Go to, for more information about Wayne, www.waynethecreditguy.com. Wayne, I like your website. I think the website address is okay.
Listen, I've come to grips with it. You can say it too.
All right, thanks a lot, Wayne. This is Bob Brooks. If you have a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.